All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're tackling an absolute giant. We are going after the holy grail of modern physics, figuring out how to weave the microscopic, jittery world of quantum atoms and the massive, curving scale of the cosmos into one single elegant fabric. You know, for decades, physics has been pretty much split right down the middle. But today, we're looking at a theoretical framework that attempts to tie the whole shebang perfectly together.
So let's just jump right in with a pretty radical thought. What if the universe isn't made of isolated competing forces, but is instead governed by one underlying stretchable fabric? Well, that is the foundational premise of engineer Mulham Al-Yaffe's ozomechanical theory. It boldly challenges the traditional divide we're so used to in physics, proposing that literally everything, from a falling apple to a quantum particle, is just a different manifestation of cosmic tension.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. A new physics paradigm. 2. The principle of connectivity. 3. The universal scale equation. 4. Rethinking quantum and relativity. And 5. Black holes without singularities.
Section 1. A new physics paradigm. Bridging the Great Divide.
The ozomechanical model tackles the ultimate crisis between general relativity and quantum mechanics right at the root. Instead of just throwing more conflicting equations at the problem, it starts with a completely radical hypothesis. It says that mass, space, and time aren't separate actors on a stage. They are the stage. They're completely interconnected in a dynamic equilibrium. You basically can't change one without pulling on the others. At the absolute bedrock of this theory is the osmomechanical field, denoted by the symbol phi sub O. Picture the universe not as some empty, dead void, but as a tightly connected, dynamic structural web. This field represents the density of that connectivity, or you can think of it as the local geometric tension within that stretchable cosmic structure. In this view, everything that exists is really just an excitation or a varying density within this underlying tension field.
Section 2. The principle of connectivity. Redefining the constants.
Now, if the universe is a web of tension, we obviously need new math to measure it. Just take a second to look at the sheer scale of this number. 1.5142 times 10 to the 29th. This is the new ozomechanical coupling constant, or G sub m. While our traditional physics relies on the familiar gravitational constant G to describe macroscopic attraction, this new constant is all about multi-scale structural bonding. It represents the raw strength of the relational coupling between masses inside this massive cosmic web.
And this immense constant actually builds into an absolute cosmic limit. The equation here, F sub O equals c to the fourth divided by g sub m, represents maximum tension. Think of this as the absolute maximum capacity the universe has to transfer tension before the entire structure saturates. This is absolutely crucial, because this limit prevents infinite collapses, and it perfectly explains why the speed of light is the ultimate speed limit. It's simply the absolute limit of tension transfer within the fabric of the cosmos.
Section 3. The universal scale equation, from atoms to galaxies.
Scaling things up brings us to this remarkable, dimensionless formula called the hierarchical scale equation. It states that the mass ratio of two objects, multiplied by their time ratio squared times their spatial radius ratio cubed, perfectly equals 1. What's genuinely mind-blowing here is that this scaling law is entirely independent of absolute size. It's a pure, unadulterated statement of structural balance.
Because that equation is dimensionless, it implies something completely wild. Physical systems at vastly different scales are actually structural copies of one another. The exact same dimensional balance that dictates an electron orbiting a proton is fundamentally the math that dictates a planet orbiting a star. It makes a brilliant argument for a truly unified scaling of the cosmos, where a galaxy is, practically speaking, just a giant atom. How cool is that?
Section 4. Rethinking quantum and relativity. Tension as the great unifier. Let's ground this by mapping it against the science we already know and love. We have our familiar baseline, Einstein's general relativity, which tells us gravity is the geometric curvature of space-time. But ozomechanics reframes this completely. Here, gravity is not a geometric curvature of some abstract spacetime. It's a physical gradient in the density of connectivity tension. Mass creates a pull because it literally physically alters the local tension of the cosmic web.
And what about the microscopic side of things? Well, in traditional quantum mechanics, quantization, which is the idea that energy comes in these discrete, chunky packets, is essentially an imposed mathematical rule. We know for sure it works, but we don't always know why. But the ozomechanical model provides a thrilling new perspective here.
It views quantization not as some external rigid rule, but as a naturally emergent property. Energy is quantized simply because the structural web of the universe naturally settles into specific, stable equilibrium states of tension.
Which actually brings us to one of the most fascinating reframings in the whole theory, quantum entanglement. Instead of that famous spooky action at a distance where two completely separate particles seem to communicate faster than light, this model argues, well, actually it argues they were never entirely separate to begin with. They are tied together by a shared tension structure. So Heisenberg's famous uncertainty principle isn't just a random blur in nature, it's the strict physical limit of our ability to measure and re-establish that structural connection without altering it.
Section 5. Black holes without singularities, the ultimate phase transition.
Under standard general relativity, a black hole collapses into a singularity. That's a point of infinite density where all our math just completely breaks down. It's essentially a giant error code in the fabric of the universe. But the osmomechanomical model offers a really elegant alternative. Remember that maximum tension limit we talked about earlier? Because that limit exists, a collapse absolutely cannot be infinite. Instead, it hits a wall. It reaches a finite state of maximum tension saturation.
So this saturation limit completely redefines the life cycle of matter. The model suggests we should view extreme gravity as just a series of phase transitions of this osmomechanical field. Think about it. Normal matter has relatively low conductivity. Compress it down into a neutron star and you get very high conductivity. Compress it even further into a black hole and it's not some destructive infinite endpoint. It is simply the final phase transition. It is the state of complete, perfectly structured tension saturation.
The real so what here is that because tension is strictly capped by that F sub O value, infinite curvature is physically impossible. The density and the energy inside a black hole, they stay completely finite. The math doesn't break. This elegant little limit has the profound potential to completely solve the singularity crisis that has been haunting physics for a century.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative thought to chew on. The osmochemical model challenges literally everything we assume about the empty space around us. It forces us to ask, are we living in a universe bound not by isolated, conflicting rules for the very large and the very small, but by a single, saturated web of connectivity? A universe structurally connected from the tiniest orbiting electron all the way up to the largest spinning galaxy? It's a genuinely fascinating lens through which to view reality, and it for sure leaves us wanting to explore even deeper. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the cosmic web. Keep questioning and keep learning.